everyone. Welcome to Ask Jenks, our social media series featuring you, our Jenks citizens. We have a very special episode this week, and we have some wonderful panelists and guests. We are going to be addressing multiple questions that come in from our citizens. So we're kind of combining it into one session today. Let's start with our introductions. Maybe we'll start over here.
I'm Rob Sellers, and I'm on the Planning Commission.
And Rob, how long have you been on the Planning Commission?
1 year.
Okay. All right.
Hi, I'm Marcae Hilton, Director of Planning for the City of Jenks.
And how long have you been in your role?
4.5 years.
Okay.
I'm Cory Box. I'm the Jenks mayor. I've been the mayor for 4 years.
Okay. And on council, how long?
For 8 years.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm Charlotte Montgomery, and I've been a resident of Jenks for 18 years, and I've been going to City Council and Planning Commission meetings for about 14 years.
Okay, wonderful. Well, as you can see, we have a variety on our panel today. So we have a member of our Planning Commission, city staff for our planning department, our mayor, who represents council as well, and then what's really neat this week is that we have a citizen of Jenks, and Charlotte is very involved in our city council meetings and planning commission meetings. She's very knowledgeable, reads our agendas. So she is a wonderful asset to be here because she is very involved, reads all of our agendas, but also gives that citizen point of view. So are we ready to start?
We are.
Okay. So let's start. Mayor Box, why don't you give just a brief overview of how this panel kind of came to be?
Well, Ask Jenks, I thought it was time we kind of take it to another level. Typically, it's somebody, an elected representative, talking to you about our thoughts and opinions. I received some early criticism that the whole thing was staged, so I figured, well, let's take that to a whole nother level and let's get other people involved. So that was the idea of getting someone like Rob, who's experiencing the Planning Commission but hasn't been around for a long time, so he's less jaded, if you will. And then someone who's very engaged but necessarily doesn't feel the pressure of making a decision, and Charlotte. And the bottom line is why this topic, planning and zoning, to me, is the most consequential and controversial thing that we do. There's more drama, there's more people get involved in City Hall and in the business of city politics because of what we're discussing today. There's so much confusion about it, and people ask me all the time, why does it seem every city council person feels the same way? And we're going to talk about that today. So we'll let them know why our opinions change the moment we take an oath to obey the U.S. Constitution, those state statutes, and to trust our city staff and, frankly, our neighbors who are paying a lot of attention to these topics. So nothing is bigger than this, and nothing is harder than this. So it deserves a lot more attention.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for giving us that little overview. Since all of us are here, we're going to kind of go around the table a little bit, talking about how each person's role affects our planning process. And everyone will have a different viewpoint on this. And so this is what's going to be exciting is the different entities in our city and how they are integral in each of the planning process is pretty interesting. So I hope you all stay the whole video. It's important, and there will be tidbits in here of how you can get more involved. So stick with us. So let's start with Marcae. So Marcae, you said you've been the director of planning for 4.5 years for City of Jenks. Previously, you were at Bixby.
I was.
In
yes.
planning.
Mm-hmm.
So a long history of planning. So tell us a little bit about, and I know this is way more complicated than you can put into 1 minute, but if you can try, how your role, what is the staff role, so the planning department role in the planning process in Jenks?
Sure. So planning is different based on the community. And in the City of Jenks, we're a statutory city. So that means whatever the state law says is what we put into our planning and zoning ordinances. And then there's some fluidity after that we can change things a little bit. So as a planning director, and according to state statute, I coordinate very closely with the Planning Commission. And the Planning Commission is a statutory role. So we have 7 planning commissioners, and it's their responsibility to think about, look at, evaluate, and assess any new development in the city in terms of land use. My role is I'm hired by the city of Jenks to facilitate that conversation. So I communicate between the council, between the staff, between the developer, and between the planning commission. And it's very important to keep all of those conversations moving forward. If someone comes in, they have a question about a piece of land that they want to buy or a piece of property that they currently own, they start with me. We have a conversation. We look at the guide, and then that is the Horizon Jenks comprehensive plan, and then you look at the actual code. So there's a guide that kind of steers us a particular direction, and then there's the actual law, which is the Unified Development Ordinance.
Mhm.
So I work directly for Planning Commission via my position at the City of Jenks.
Okay, so you're kind of the compass for these different entities on rules, regulations, what our plan says. You're kind of giving them guidance and helping that decision. Okay, Rob, so you've been on the Planning Commission for a year, so
Yes.
enough time under your belt to kind of get a good lay of the land. So can you give me and the rest of us an idea of what is Planning Commission's role in the planning process?
Well, the Planning Commission's role is really to make a determination on fitting in within the whole comprehensive land use with the UDOs, with all that we have to follow the law by. And we take into consideration citizens' concerns about those things. But at the end, it's all set out for us. It's to a certain extent, it's black and white. Property owners have rights, the citizens have rights, and we want the community to have a good and vibrant environment that they can call home. And so taking all those things into consideration and the concerns of the citizens that come to talk to us about their concerns, we make a decision on the use of that land and making sure that it fits what the city needs.
That makes sense. That's a great explanation. So it sounds like it starts with you, then it gets, after some discussion, over to the Planning Commission. So now we're going to, since you're representing council, because I believe that's the next step. So once it gets through Planning Commission, council gets it. And I know we've talked a little bit about this in previous discussions about people assume you guys have made a decision before it already even gets, to the agenda, things like that. And we've addressed that. But especially after hearing Marcae and Rob talk about it's already gone through some processes and approvals and meeting laws, and they've already heard concerns, it does sound like it is coming to council ready. In some ways, some things have already kind of been checked off. So, but could you give us, I know you've already done it, but please humor us, what is council's role now?
I as soon as you asked him the question, I was really thinking, what is the number one thing council can do? And I might change my mind an hour from now, but I think it's listen. So we're listening to our residents, we're listening to sometimes the applicant, who could be a developer, could be somebody representing the developer, and then of course listen to what the Planning Commission's doing, and then listen to staff. If the bottom line is every city councilor at some point has probably come to the city planner and said, so wait a minute, when you come before us and you say, I recommend, do you really recommend? And the answer is yes. And what that means is they've literally gone through a long series of checks. Does this follow the private property rights? Is it following state statute? What about city code and ordinances and all these things? And then at the end of the day, is it the best use of this land? And the hardest part, I think, for the city council is we're the only ones here who took an oath. Planning commissioners don't take an oath. So theoretically, we're supposed to strip emotion out of that decision, which is extremely difficult to do. And for us, we understand that every no comes with a consequence and every yes comes with a consequence. So that's probably the hard part for us. But I think what we could do better as a group is listening to both sides and trying to find a balance. And that really can be the hard part, because we do understand the longer you've been in my role as a city council person, every decision has a consequence, and every decision has a lasting consequence that could affect a development or a project 10 years down the road. So we're setting a tone, and then the tone kind of always has to be somewhere in a happy medium. Where I don't think we're striving for perfection. We're striving more for a balance. And I think that the people need to understand, and I'll address it one more time. Are decisions made when we walk into the room before we get there? No. But I can tell you, I've watched the last planning commission meeting, and I would tell this: the residents that show up, you need to do a better job selling that's your opportunity to change our mind. And guess what? Salesmanship and relationship matter. And it was very poor at the last meeting. The developer, the applicant, has a job to change our mind and persuade us that this is a good use of land. Salesmanship and relationship should matter. I don't think they always do a great job in selling their ideas. Some people have a hard time doing it. But that is the ultimate, that is the last decision for the council members. Sometimes we walk in knowing that planning and commission is completely behind this project. So yes, we're leaning towards trusting their expertise, because we're not tacticians, we are strategists. And they've already told us that this fits your existing strategy. There's really so it does. We've kind of already gotten to the point where we're satisfied with where we're at, and the council meeting is the last opportunity for all sides to turn the decision closer to a yes or closer to a no. But it has to be done there, and it has to be done within a short period of time. And that's the hard part that people find, is getting their emotions under check and coming in and saying, you're wrong and this is why. And if we could have more of that, and people could do it with a good plan and do it well, I think they might see more councils walking in going, I didn't consider that. You might see some last minute swing, but as is often is the case, that doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, perfect. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And it's a good lead into discussing the citizen role in our planning process. So we know you don't have an official role. You're not on staff. Citizens aren't, but you guys are instrumental in our planning process. For your voice, you are the ones that live here, you work here, you do business here, you shop here. So can you give us a little overview on what your view is on the citizen role in our planning process?
I see the citizen role first to understand what's going on around you, but to further understand that it is more than just what's happening next door across the street. It's the entire community. And you have to be engaged in some manner. And there are ways currently that you can engage that are much different than they used to be 10, 12 years ago. It's beneficial for residents to engage and look at all the things that are happening in the city, because everything goes from a wide area and it affects everything down as it comes close to you. Or to look at it another way, if you're looking only at what's happening around you, it does impact everything else in the city, those planning and zoning decisions.
Yes. Okay. That's a really, really nice outlook on how this works from a citizen point of view. So as we've talked about each role, we're going to talk about a few other things. We know we get questions coming in. Why are certain things approved? Why aren't things approved? Why is this business going here? Why is that business going here? We'll talk a little bit about that. But just in case we're losing people, which we better not, but if we are, well, I do want the important part of you are,
tingling.
yeah, I know, I'll do a magic trick. But I really want people to know from a citizen who is very involved and knows all the channels of what are some important ways you can be involved. And I want to clarify, it doesn't mean you have to show up to every city council meeting. There are other ways to be involved in the process. I think those are important. But just if you could give us a couple, quick tips for some of our citizens that just want to know what's going on, what's coming.
The first thing you can do is go to the city website, and they do have a drop-down icon for Notify Me. Get signed up, and there's several options you can sign up for. Check the box on every one of them. Then when a meeting or an agenda is posted, it will automatically go to your email and text. The other thing that you can do is on the city website, they also have another drop-down icon where you can see where potential zoning and land use applications will be coming up. And literally, it's just have that bookmarked, go and click periodically to see what's there. And of course, the other thing is that these are all now recorded in video, and it means that you can literally be any place at any time to watch these meetings. And especially if you get something from the agenda that is near to your place of business or where you own land or your own home, then you can look for that agenda item when you are watching the YouTube video. And that's live stream, and or you can go back and watch it anytime that you have the time to view that.
That's wonderful. Thank you, because those are great tips. And I would also say with those, when you're going and looking at these, these are at the beginning stages that you get to see this. This isn't when you go and click these notifications that the decision's been made. This is at the beginning stage when you get these notifications for the agendas. So you do have an opportunity to come in and listen and share your opinion. And we want people to understand that that is an option for everyone in our community. So thank you, Charlotte. I appreciate that. So let's move on to, and this is going to be a group discussion, so it's not specific to everyone. You guys just chime in. But I think an important question that we get a lot here is, and I'm not going to use a specific business because I think it's we've had every kind of business and every kind of complaint come to us, but why does one business, get put in Main Street over another business, or why does two businesses that are very similar get put on the same street? Can we talk about what that means and how that starts and how we do have control of some things and we don't have control of other things?
But that's not the question. The question is, why do you keep approving Mexican restaurants? That's the real question. You just tried to sugarcoat it. But
sure. So
those are the questions I get. Why are we not controlling the cuisine of every restaurant in the city of Jenks?
Well, and maybe that's... Well,
you can answer hers or you can answer mine.
We'll talk about the editing of that later.
There's
I'll
no
answer the
editing here.
question.
Let's just be honest.
Yeah.
So I think the great thing about living in the United States and living in Oklahoma and living and residing in Jenks is that we are part of a market-driven society. So the market decides what gets to go where to some degree. My role and the role of the Planning Commission and the council is to decide, is that an appropriate place? It's not to decide if they have enough money. It's not to decide if there are too many of them. It's not to decide if I like their queso. It's just to decide, is it allowed and is it appropriate? So when I look at the Unified Development Ordinance, which is our zoning code, it'll say zoning. And we can have a conversation. Well, this property is already zoned. You'll never even see it. It'll never even come to the council or to Planning Commission, because if they come in and they say, hey, we're looking at this building at this address, so I'm going to look at the zoning. Oh, it's commercial shopping. Okay, great. And what did you want to do? Well, I want to do a restaurant. Okay, great. Well, you're allowed. Get your building permit. Turn in your site plan. Site plan review is internal. So Planning Commission and Council is never going to have a conversation about that. If it's allowed by right, and allowed by right in our code means it has a P. So there's a graphic there's a chart, and it'll say blank, which means it's not allowed at all. We won't even consider it. P is permitted, or a specific use permit, which means maybe under the right conditions and with the right exceptions. So if you come in to the city and you've already picked out a building and your zoning is good to go, we could have 5 of the same in a row. If they feel like that the market will allow them to succeed, most people don't want to spend money for no reason. They truly believe in their product. They truly believe in that community and in that area, and they believe that they'll succeed.
Mm-hmm.
And that comes alongside the Planning Commission as well as the council with regards to someone coming to get a use of their land, of their property. Yes, we would love to see Italian restaurant or any type of cuisine that would be more desirable. But if they want to put a restaurant there and it's part of the code and it's part of what our planning does is look at that to make sure that we're putting the right spots, that right things into the right spots. There's nothing really that we can do to stop that. I mean, the developer needs to know that they're going to be out of business if they don't have a good product and don't serve their customers well.
So it sounds like when people are saying, why is this? Okay, I'll go with Mayor Box's. Why is this Mexican restaurant? Why is this new queso going in, 3 doors down from another restaurant of the same type? It sounds like in some ways that we don't really have control over that in some situations. Like it's just, you can or can't be a restaurant or not a restaurant in this space, and we don't dictate what kind.
Well, I typically ask the question I propose. I get it a lot. Why did you authorize this? And I usually follow up with one question. Would you prefer that your city council have the ultimate power to choose all of those things? And when it's a hot emotional topic, the answer is, yeah, I would like for you to have that control right up until the point where it's in my backyard. And then I don't want you to have that control. I am not a fan of government having any more control than what we already have. I think the hardest part about planning is you set up a system, you have a land use, then you have the plan, and then you have the zoning. And like she said, many projects happen in and around here without you and I even knowing about it, because we don't have to know about it. The law says you can sell fried chicken gizzards, and that's it. And we don't get to argue with it. And if you've done your homework and you believe you can sell a lot of them, you're going to succeed. If you didn't do your homework, the free market will run you out of business. And we've seen that happen. So I tell people all the time, don't give your government that much control, because eventually it will backfire. And zoning is supposed to be fair, and it's the hardest thing to accomplish is being fair. That's why I consider zoning it's not a science. She hasn't mastered it. She's practicing this. We're all practicing this as if it's medicine, because it's never perfected. We're just trying to massage it along the way. But I do get asked this quite often and right now there's construction happening on Main Street between 1st and 5th. I completely disagree with them being there. I've said nothing, because the law as it is says they can be there. I think it's a waste of space. I don't agree with it, but if they have a grand opening, we will be there and we will support them and wish them well. But, we don't want to have that kind of control. We want to put a system in place where people can figure out what the temperature's like in Jenks for development. So whether you're a professional builder or developer, or just somebody who wants to come in and make a one-time investment, it kind of should be a level playing field, not evil. It should be a level playing field. No, these are real conversations. It should be a level playing field where we don't have to have layers and layers of bureaucracy and decisions being made. So that's how I feel about it.
Well, I don't see the process as black and white. Usually, most of my questions, which I've found the planning director, Marcae, to always be very willing to answer questions, is it's not black and white. There always seems to be some nuance or a twist or a turn someplace that you would think from reading the code, and I've read the code several times and the comprehensive plan, and you would think that everything needs to fit into a proper slot. And what I find is sometimes it's not a slot, it's a round circle that needs to go in. And I'm questioning, why would you want that type of thing to go in, or why isn't something else going into this particular site? And all I can say is that you can't just read everything. You have to pick up the phone, you have to engage, and you need to call City Hall and ask for the planning director, and she will help guide you through it and explain why this will happen when it doesn't fit perfectly within the guidelines.
Right. And that does make sense. I think that's with anything. It's hard to put anything on paper, every single decision, and put it into terms that we can understand, where it's not 3,000 pages long to explain everything. So Marcae is such a great resource, and I hear that from a lot of citizens, is that they can call and pick up the phone and you answer. First of all, we love that. And that you are really great about explaining and getting making sure people understand the process. But it does take some engagement from the citizens. Marcae doesn't have in her job duty to reach out to every citizen and explain it to them. So that is very important. Yes. And that is important to know, is that there are other ways that the city does try to notify citizens with our Notify Me on our website. So it's important to know that we also, as a city, do take some time to try to notify our citizens about upcoming projects. Charlotte mentioned a couple of them. Through our website, you can get notified of our agendas and our maps, but there's also some physical postings that Marcae actually kind of has gone up and above and beyond, because there is a state statute. But can you explain that a little bit?
Sure. We have 3 steps for most zonings. You're going to get a 300-foot radius report. So you take the outline of your property, so your legal description, and then INCOG provides a map that shows everybody within 300 feet of that legal description gets an actual letter in the mail. And just so you know, we cannot control the post office. I think that's important to say, because
Renters
a lot of
versus
times
owners.
people feel like they didn't get a notice, and all I know is that it was delivered to the post office. Then the other thing, which I think is more important, and that is a posted sign. So that's state statute. On comprehensive plan major amendments, it is not required by state statute, but as a city, I instituted putting up the same sign. So you'll get a sign on a comprehensive land use amendment. And then the third thing is in the newspaper. So if you read the newspaper, you're good. Nobody reads the newspaper, but that's the 3 ways that you'll get a public notice. When I first came to the city of Jenks, we used the sandwich signs, and occasionally we still do. And the reason is because maybe the applicant, occasionally the legal description we'll realize was not right. And so we're now scrambling and we can't get the sign posted in time. So we'll put the sandwich boards up until we get the yellow sign up. And that way you get that, you still have the same 20-day notice. And state statute doesn't say what the sign has to look like. It doesn't say where to put it. It just says on the property so that the public knows. But the standard is across the metro area is to use the large yellow signs. I think they're pretty easy to read. You generally have to pull over, which makes it a little bit challenging. And that's why it's always good to go to the website. If you see a sign, you can go to the website and read it very clear, and you don't have to risk your life.
That's what I was going to say. When you see these yellow signs, we do have people come in all the time. They're like, well, it's on Elm. How am I supposed to see that? But if you see a yellow sign, it's on our website. So you can just go to our website and find that and find the information. The yellow sign's just really to make sure people know something's happening on that property. So
are we meeting or exceeding the state's requirements for notifications?
We meet the state's requirements on zoning, and we far exceed the state's. There are no requirements for comprehensive land use.
Okay.
That's 100% whatever the city decides. And I think that it's very important for people to know that this land use is possible, but we're asking if you would be interested and willing for it to change, and that is not required. There are no requirements at the state. So that's something that I brought and implemented.
Okay. Thank you.
And I think it's important to note, like, because we have a limited time, there's a lot of terms we're throwing around: land use, comprehensive plan, things like that maybe you don't even know what we're talking about right now. Yeah. But that's why it is important. These things are on our website under the planning department page. We will do future, social media initiatives and things about planning, but it is good to familiarize yourself a little bit with some of these terms because we say them a lot. So I want to thank everyone for being here. Thank you so much for taking the time. We have so much information to cover, and we want to make sure we capture all of it and you get everything that's important to know about our planning process. So this is going to be the end of our part 1 for this Ask Jenks, and stay tuned for our next session, which will be part 2, and we hope you join us.